Chicago, Bozo Circus is on the air. Starring Bozo, the world's most famous clown.
Welcome, everybody. Welcome to WikiTree's Bingo Spaces. And today our special guest is Dee. And Dee has a love of Bozos. If you guys haven't welcome, Dee. Welcome to the Bingo page.
Thank you.
This is really interesting to me, and I'm curious to see what everybody else thinks as well. So Dee and I work a lot together, and if you do not know Dee, she does also a lot of work with the featured profiles of the week. She's always suggesting featured profiles, so if you are ever looking at who the featured profiles are, chances are that Dee has recommended a fair portion of them. And we were talking one day about childhood favorite characters, and she mentioned Bozos and said, "Did you realize how many Bozos there are?" And I said, "There's one, there's only one." No. And then Dee enlightened me. Not only is Bozo a phenomenon in the United States, it's global, isn't it, Dee?
Yeah, it is. There were several countries that had their own Bozos.
I'm just totally surprised at that. I just, because a lot of times when we grow up and we're sitting in front of the TV and we're seeing, like, for the example that we're doing today, Bozo, there's only one Bozo in our life. There's only one. We don't care how it was started or who else is doing it. There's only really one Bozo with the really bad hair. So, there's multiple.
I was probably an adult before I realized that my Bozo wasn't the only one ever in the world. I thought, it was a fairly local program.
Yeah. I was amazed too. Now, Dee, where was your Bozo at? What city?
Chicago.
And see, mine was in Baltimore. And you probably could have talked to both of us at the same time. We could have met, anywhere in the world and said, "No, my Bozo lives in Baltimore." You would have said,
exactly.
Mine lives in Chicago, so it's quite funny. Now, the Bozo the Clown is two of my brothers. Their favorite, one of their favorites in the whole world. They never missed it, never ever missed it. It was on Saturday, and it was their jam and their thing that they always saw. So, I want to point out that I dropped the link for Dee's page. The Bozo Circus is on the air. And that is their famous line that we just showed in the intro video. That's how the show started. And what always amazed me is Bozo never had a bad day. He was always crazy and waving. He never really had a bad day, did he?
Never. And that crazy laugh of his. Yeah. I don't know if the other Bozos had that, but mine had a crazy laugh.
We're sorry for the buzzing sound. That's part of the reason why Dee is not showing her face. She's in an environment right now that has a buzzing sound, and I apologize for that. But we'll just consider part of the circus noise. We'll just so
yeah. Sorry about the noise.
Yeah, but this is funny because people are mentioning that there are a lot of Bozos in their life. And I got to say, Carol, this is really funny. A good friend of mine is from Poland, and the way he pronounces Bozos is so funny. When he immigrated to the United States, he would say this word. And I'm like, how did this person learn this word? It seems so, not American to me to say this word in a derogatory way that he was saying it, because I think of Bozo the Clown. Once he found out Bozo the Clown, he went to archives and started just watching Bozo the Clown, because this is fantastic. We don't have anything like this over there. And that brings me up to Flo, who's never heard of it in Germany. So, Flo, I am curious, did you have any type of clown show when you were a child, or is there one there? And it's funny because Anne loves Chicago, so you probably are. And I agree, there are different levels of Bozo, too. In real life and on the show. So they're definitely different ones. Now, I'm really curious for everybody. We used to go to the circus with my kid, and it was mostly the Big Apple circus, but they used to come to town. And mimes and clowns are something that I avoid like the plague. I will not go near them. I don't know why. They creep me out. I can't deal with it. But Bozo doesn't. And why do you think that is, Dee, that most people that don't like clowns don't have a problem with Bozo?
Partly, I think it was because of the environment of the show, and that it was a lot of slapstick comedy.
Yeah.
And kids, personally, it's not my thing, but lots and lots of kids get into slapstick. They like to see them falling down and getting hit in the face with pies and things like that. So I think it's just silly and it's safe.
You're right. I like that. Silly and it's safe.
And then you have other things like the unfortunate serial killer that, was,
takes on the persona, I guess, of.
Yeah. And you have like movies like Killer Clowns from Outer Space where they're really creepy and they
really
actually, eat people and stuff. But there's a few, like, I loved Red Skelton when I was a kid, and he had a clown character. And there was oh shoot. There was another clown character that was part of Ringling Brothers and Barnum and Bailey Circus that I used to see him on television every now and then. He'd do little he never spoke a word. But he did little vignettes and they were just really sweet, and him I like. Other clowns, not so much.
I know. I don't understand the idea around why clowns really freak people out, but Bozo doesn't, but it just seems to be the case. Like you said, he was silly, but he always had an audience of kids. And
Right.
Those tickets were very hard to get. Those were not easy tickets to get. Sometimes groups like the Scouts could get them, but a lot of times moms would literally either go to the TV stations back in the day to get tickets or call on the phone forever and ever. Do you have? And there's waiting lists. This show was extremely popular. So let me take a pause. A couple of people are asking, what does this have to do with bingo? And what this has to do is kind of what we did with the intro. The bingo at this hour is about space pages, and we focus and show off space pages created by you, the WikiTreeers, because there's so many awesome space pages out there. Some are very, very serious. Some could be detailed wills. Some could be about a particular religion topic. We've had recollections where somebody transcribed their grandmother's letters and their grandmother's life story. We've had from Chris Ferriolo of the Italy Project, there is a book literally written about his family, and he's taken that book to create the profiles in WikiTree for it and show us the book and documented using the book as a source as well. We've had medical women, or excuse me, scientific women, that somebody created a page just of women that were in science, because that was Erin's love, the WikiTreeer. She wanted to talk about women in science. And we have a lot more coming up. I can't tell you what's going to be next month. It's kind of a surprise that we have next month, but it's a huge topic that a lot of people ask about. And it's a huge space page that actually grew into one space page and is now about 10 all connected together. So the bingo spaces is all about space pages on WikiTree because the space pages get lost between the branches. Sometimes we focus too much on the profiles. And then like Dee has done here with the bingo, with Bozo circuses on the air, she's collected the Bozos that she's found around the world to try and bring them together, because this is just something that's whimsical and fun for Dee to reminisce about and to learn more about. So that's kind of what Bingo Spaces is about. And we do bingo games, bingo cards based on this. We give 2 prizes each bingo. Later on tonight will be bingo historical notables, and tonight's feature will be Nobel Prize winners. So let me go ahead and drop the first bingo card in the chat one more time, and we're going to go ahead and start that one. And I'll give you guys a little heads up on what to do. Dee and I were talking, it's kind of chilly here, so we're kind of on a slower mode here. This cold spell took us by surprise. Okay, so if you have not played bingo before, need a refresher, these are the rules for bingo. I dropped a link in the chat. Just go ahead and open that link, and you'll use your mouse, or if you have a tablet, your finger, to go ahead and click when I say the words. A person can only win a bingo prize once every 6 months, but not only bingo prize, that also includes Sourceathon and Connectathon. So if you just won on the Sourceathon, you're not eligible to win at bingo, but you can still play. 1 prize per household every 6 months. So if you have 20 people in your house, only 1 can win every 6 months. And 1 mug per prize. It's a mug. There are some other options, but the mugs are really cool. And for the longest time, our bingo mug was the best seller in the store. So 1 mug per prize. And everyone can play. It's not just WikiTreeers. You can bring your friends, your family as well. You do not have to be a member of WikiTree to play. But if you do win and you are a member of WikiTree, could you please drop your WikiTree ID in the chat? That helps us out a lot. 2 bingo cards per time slot. And this is how you win. So use your mouse and win by clicking the words as we say them. Win horizontally, vertically, or diagonally. If you happen to click a word by mistake, just click it again and it will deselect. And don't forget, the most important thing is if you win bingo, please type bingo in the chat. And feel free to yell at us because we do end up talking a lot. So feel free to do caps and type bingo. If several of you win bingo at the same time, it's quick draw. Whoever is the first one to actually type bingo in the chat is the winner. So let's go ahead and start with this very first one. For those of you that have been here, this will be familiar. We do the first card is always the same, just so we can get to the good parts of talking about the space pages. So if everybody is ready, let's go ahead and start the bingo. So the first word is sandbox. And what we're talking about is all the different pages, space pages you can create. I have a really, really large sandbox that I'm dealing with now that I'm trying to prove an ancestor. We have a lot of stories about them, so we're putting all the stories and disproving them or proving them one at a time. In a sandbox, a lot of people will keep a sandbox private because they're doing research, and some will keep it open so that way others can join in on the research. And biographical sketch. This is kind of what we had last month. We had Grandma Nellie, who wrote her own story. She was her son said, "Hey, if you're bored, go ahead and write your own story." And gosh darn it, she did. And we had information from that. That's really cool because she's no longer with us. Family reunion. If you have family reunions, if you had one, or even family holidays coming up, if you always take the same family holiday picture, you know, I don't know if people still do cards around the holidays and send them, but a family or a space page would be really kind of cool to keep those pictures year by year so you can see how everybody grows and changes, especially if you wear the same outfit.
That's a really good idea because I have a friend who they are now somewhere between their 25th and their 30th year of doing family reunions.
Really?
And they go up north way up into Wisconsin, and they all bring their campers and they hang out for a week.
See, it's really cool because you can see a couple different things with this. So you can see, you know, children that weren't born yet, then they became babies and now they're teens or adults and having children of their own. So you can track those photos. You can also, as you said, bring their campers. a lot of people are into camping or vehicles and things like that. So you can also trace how they've improved and what they look
Right.
like along the years. And the camping space, if there's been, trees planted when they first started and now they're really tall. It's just really cool and fascinating to see everything progress, because
Right.
this is a circle of life, and a family reunion space page would be fantastic to show it. Oh, and thank you, Joko. So family reunion is also the theme for this month's photos on WikiTree. So if you were thinking about posting up a family reunion photo, why not do a space page and start putting up several? You can also label the individual people there and tag them to their profile. That would be really, really cool. Okay. And wills. We talked about wills. I had somebody for Secret Santa last year on WikiTree had a very, very old and very, very long will that had a difficult challenge reading it and understanding it because of the handwriting and the wording. And they asked if somebody would transcribe it, and somebody did. And they did not use AI. I thought they used AI to transcribe it, and they didn't. So that was a fantastic space page because it helps prove relationships and locations as well. So research, maybe you just want a scratch page, a page with random research. You don't necessarily want to keep research on, one or two profiles. You want to maybe keep family research on a different space page. These can be private if you're still working on it. I know a lot of adoptees, for example, will do a research page and keep it private so they can try and keep track of their notes on WikiTree and the profiles. Okay, and then historical event. I do have a question for everybody. So I am considering something, and I would like to know, has anybody heard of the one event? You've heard of one place studies and you've heard of one name studies. Has anybody heard of one event studies? It's been around, but it's starting to become more popular. Titanic could be considered one event, but also a wedding could be considered one event. So there's good and bad. It doesn't always have to be a disaster.
I've never heard of that, but that's a good idea to use a space page for. If you're,
Okay.
Interested in, say, like a coal mining disaster.
Yeah, exactly. And especially if you have a connection to that event or that person, that makes the space page even more important, because you'll bring something to that space page, a passion and something to that space page that maybe the rest of us won't know. You might have photos from your family that you can bring up on that historical event. Someone gave me a really interesting positive one, a really, really positive one, and I couldn't remember what it is, and I still can't remember what it is. And Carol, I think that Flo and Anne are just having fun with me with the bingo, bingo, bingo. I'm going to guess that they don't have bingo, because I think they said bingo before I even showed the first word. And so I'm glad to hear that you haven't heard the term, but I sort of did one with the Putin or Putin Putin raid. And if you did this with a space page too, this would be a perfect historical event, and it would be a perfect one event study. So something to think about, something that we're going through. Okay, and I'm reading the chat. So I think that we don't have bingo yet. So if you do have bingo, feel free to yell out bingo. And I got to tell you, Anne and Flo make me laugh every bingo we have by doing bingo, bingo, bingo. A court document. So this is really this could be really interesting. Oddly, again, somebody had this for Secret Santa where their great grandfather was murdered, and they had many court documents and they wanted them transcribed. And this was 2 years ago, and somebody actually transcribed everything in the format of a court document, and it was a fascinating read. If you put this information on the profile, it would get lost. It would definitely get lost. So that's why it's more interesting to have it on a space page, so you can kind of read and go with the entire timeline with it instead of having it on the profile. Okay, so no bingo yet. So you're still in time. Eric, maybe everybody can get you caught up on the bingo words that we had, and he'll probably come in with bingo. An estate file. This is kind of like a will. Sometimes in the olden days, they would attach the estate file to the will, and everybody thinks it's the same. But you know, you had 5 cows at $10 each, and you had a rake, and you had so many crops and things like that. The reason why that's kind of important is this is really important for the USBH, the U.S. Black Heritage Project, because unfortunately they will also list their slaves. And this is a way that they can try and trace back and build family lines for those people that did have slaves in their lines.
I actually have handwritten pages from one of my grandfathers that's kind of like an estate file.
Yeah.
He lost a farm and they were having to auction off everything. And it's really interesting to read.
And it's what they had, probably what they had to auction off, and also what the prices went for.
Exactly. And it, you know, it's like down to, you know, 2 hoes.
Yeah, it goes
and
down
things like that.
I think it goes down to even like the bed that they had.
Right.
And so this is kind of a capsule of time, a sad event, but it's a capsule of time that you can trace your ancestors and kind of walk in their shoes. But if you listed all this on a profile, it would get lost. It would be too much for a profile. A space page would be the way to do it. So music, I love this. Someone has created a music page where they're starting to upload little snippets of their own music. It's a YouTube clip, but of music that they've created based on their ancestors. And we're trying to get that person on Big O Spaces too. But otherwise, music could be, if you have a favorite band, like if you're currently obsessing over, you know, a band that's active now that maybe have replaced their lead singer, and they had multiple lead singers in the past. I'm thinking Journey here, you know how many they've had. So a music page, a fan page, basically, to music would be kind of cool. And then you could also link to YouTube videos. And I don't know, this is interesting. So Flo in Germany, they even went down to the bed sheets that they would have on there. That's kind of interesting. Photos. Now, this is a very interesting space page idea too, because let's say that you have, like me, you have, I won't lie, I have hundreds, probably thousands of tombstone photos that I've collected, but I have not uploaded. I could upload them to a space page and then work on them slowly, create the profiles for them, and move the photo off that space page over to the profile page. But it would be kind of like a to-do list for me for tombstone photos. Or maybe you have a bunch of photos that you found or you bought at a store and you have no clue who these people are. You could put them up there on a space page and advertise it on social media or something like that and say, can you help me? I bought these photos at this, you know, yard sale or wherever it is. Do you know these people? And if they're all collected on one page, sometimes that's helpful to find out who the people are and identify them. And one-place study, we've kind of talked a little bit about that. If you have a one-place study that is going to be a space page, no matter what, when we create it, same with one name study, the cool thing is you can create other space pages to hang off that one-place study. So for me, I have one that is on an abandoned coal mine town. And what I've done is I've created space pages for the streets. So it's not all on one page. So I can document who lived there. A to-do list. Who doesn't have a to-do list for WikiTree? I think we all. Oh, I think we all have a to-do list for WikiTree, and this is just a good way just to keep what you're working on and cross it out or delete it, whatever you want. And we have a bingo. This is fantastic. Margaret, congratulations on the bingo. You're going to email Eowyn at wikitree.com and tell her that you won one of the bingos today, and she will get all the information to you. Congratulations. I am thrilled that you got the win, especially if you didn't get to win and you tried so hard at the Sourceathon to win a prize. Welcome to those who are here because of that. And let's get talking about Bozo. So we've got a couple different Bozos to show you as we talk about this. And as we talk about Bozo the Clown, if you have a particular childhood favorite character TV show, give us a shout out. Does not have to be Bozo. It could be anything that you particularly like watching, especially on a Saturday morning. That's when I hung out at the TV. So we're going to briefly talk about Alan. Alan was the creator of Bozo, but he was not a Bozo, from what I understand. So he was at Capitol Records.
Yeah, he was a writer and producer, and he created a set of record albums and read-along books. And Bozo the Clown was one of the first characters that they used for that set.
And it was great too because he also helped see the development and launch Bonanza. And I know a lot of us watched that show. Completely different than Bozo the Clown. I don't think you can get any more different than Bozo the Clown. But let's talk about the first one. Who was the first Bozo the Clown, Dee?
Hang on just a sec.
And I know that
Pinto.
Yeah, Pinto. And I know you spent a lot of time. And I will mention also that his son took up the legend as well. But
Pinto 𝐒𝐻𝐽 was the very first one. Sorry, I'm slow here.
And I mean, so he kind of created the persona in the silliness that we have. He was just, he was kind of amazing too, because, he started it out on the West Coast, didn't he?
He was hired by Alan Livingston, who, the producer from Capitol Records. He was hired to be the title character, and he did the voices. He did 8 other voices too, along with Bozo. And so lots of little animals and the odd creatures and stuff. And he did the very first television series in 1951 on CBS in Los Angeles.
And see, this is just so funny to me because this started in LA. And again, I will tell you that Dee and I will battle it on no, my Bozo was the only Bozo. And we're in, you're in the Midwest and I'm on the East Coast. But guess what? Bozo actually started over on the West Coast. And it's a fabulous picture. For those that don't know Bozo, this is kind of where it started. Tons of makeup. Tons of makeup.
Pinto did it until 1956, when someone bought the licensing rights from Capitol Records. And so he wasn't allowed to do it anymore. But his son Vance, in 1959, took over playing Bozo back on Los Angeles television.
Back on the TV. And you mentioned too that the original Bozo had other voices. So he is the original voice of Goofy, Pluto, Practical Pig and the 3 Little Pigs, Grumpy and Sleepy and Snow White and the 7 Dwarfs. I mean, that's kind of huge there. So beyond creating this persona of Bozo the Clown, but he also co-wrote songs like Who's Afraid of the Big Bad Wolf? I remember that song as a kid. That was pretty big. Okay, so his son took over, and then the next.
And And he also did voices for some of the Munchkins in The Wizard of Oz.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Now, see, I thought that they all did their own. That's kind of curious to me.
Well, you know, I thought that for a long time too.
And I like so looks creepy to you. So this is interesting that the original looks creepy to you. So let's move over to more of the silly look. And I love this page. This page is so fun. Dee has really made it kind of like the silly bozo that we love. And if you could help us get him connected, that would be fantastic. This is kind of where we're talking about this page. If you have a particular location, city, and the bozo has not been created on the main page, please jump in and help. And if you can help us
absolutely
get Robert Bell, Bob Bell, I'll put his profile, and if you can help us get connected, this would be fantastic, because this guy is probably what most of us think of Bozo.
Yep.
What do you think? Yep.
There's
there.
He's my bozo. I think part of the reason that I started watching this show wasn't for him, but the fact that there was another performer in Chicago that did children's shows called Ray Rayner. And he played Oliver Oliver on Bozo's Circus. And I loved Ray Rayner. I watched him every morning before I went to school. And anybody who grew up in the right time frame around Chicago in northern Indiana knows who Ray Rayner is and knows who Bozo is, this Bozo. And so I think that's why I got started watching this Bozo. Plus, he was on every day after lunch. And so, you know, in the summers, that's what you watched.
That's what you watched. And he was not just Bozo, wasn't he like a news, a real...
Yeah, he started out originally working on radio for Wally Phillips, who was also at one point a big name, a DJ in Chicago. And then he moved to Chicago with Wally Phillips' show. And that's how, you know, he got to be on the air here.
And I'll point out, too, there's something else that Dee found and shared with me. There is an International Clown Hall of Fame.
Yes.
You know, at first when she says, like, no way, okay, this is kind of silly, you know, but when you go to this International Clown Hall of Fame, you'll be blown away by the global clowns. I had no idea that there was even such a thing as, you know, international, but you'll be just blown away. And if you are in a global audience and you don't know who Bozo is because it's an American creation, you'll be surprised how many you recognize from your own locations. It's pretty fascinating. So
lots of circus clowns are in there.
You know, and we don't think about that a lot. We think, you know, we're talking about TV clowns, and Bozo never really was a circus clown. He was more of your TV personality.
Right.
He was not going to be. And, you know, that's a good point. I think there is a clown museum, and I hope that they are doing well after Milton. But I think you're right. There's a clown museum down there. I know that also Ripley's Believe It or Not also has a lot of this type of silliness that Bozo has, so that might be something. And the most internationally known clown is probably Pop Off, and I agree.
Should I say I don't know who that is? So everybody's forgiving him for not knowing who Bozo is.
Well, then I will let Joku Flo let us know who Pop Off is, and I will try and also bring up their Wikipedia page too, his Wikipedia page. Now, this one is probably the most famous. Would you say that Bob Bell is probably the most famous Bozo that was out there?
Yeah,
Yeah, I
definitely
would think so. This is the one that I'd like to say I grew up with them. This was before my time, but my brothers did grow up with them, and this was something that they, you mentioned the slapstick silliness. Oh my gosh, they were so into to that silliness with this. My mom will tell you that she can still hear them giggling after watching these shows and things like that. So this was my Bozo over in Baltimore, and it's funny because he also created the recurring role of Scoop Toot, the scatterbrain newsman. And the reason why I'm mentioning that is because Chris in the chat, when I asked what other childhood characters did you watch on TV, she mentioned Captain Kangaroo. And
Oh yeah.
and he also was on Captain Kangaroo. I remember Captain Kangaroo. I was like, Mr. Ed, and Captain Kangaroo was awesome. That was pretty much at the very beginning of my time, though. So he went off fairly quickly. But he also was this guy Stu was also known to cultivate and try to encourage puppeteering and new clowns to join the business, because at the time around his retirement, clowns were gone. We're starting to see electronics starting to come in, and we're starting to see more of the games and the arcades and things like that coming in. So he tried to kind of introduce a new generation to what clown and puppeteering can be about.
He also had another children's program called Professor Cool's Fun School, SKOOL, which was from 67 to 77 on Saturday mornings.
That one's pretty cool.
And he was a conductor on a show called Caboose in 1978. And did a puppet show called 54 Space Corps.
So he was really trying to keep the puppets, the children engaged, the clowns. That's pretty cool. That's right. Pretty cool when you see something like that. And when I see something like the previous one, Bob Bell, and I see Stu Kerr here, I kind of also think about Mr. Roberts, because this is kind of around the same time as well, where you've got these personalities coming in, trying to educate and have fun with the kids, as you said, in a safe way.
Yeah, that's like Ray Rayner that I mentioned. He had several children's shows that he did, and there was also, sorry, I'm reading and trying to talk at the same time, and it doesn't work. And oh well, that thought's gone. Sorry.
And then we have one that is probably the most famous that you guys might not know of, and that would be Willard Scott.
Yep.
Willard Scott was a Bozo the Clown.
He actually invented the first look for Ronald McDonald too.
And I think I read that when Ronald McDonald came around, Bozo kind of took a back seat. Ronald became larger than life because it's also dealing with cheeseburgers and things like that. And Ronald kind of became more popular. Also, I think the TV stations were changing what their programming was. I noticed that around the time that Bozos started leaving the airway, there were less and less live audiences, and there was more news casting and more news type of things going on before we got to all the talk shows that had. So that was an interesting discovery for me, is that Willard was. And there's Popoff.
Yeah, he had a weekday show, Willard did. And he went to the White House when JFK was in office. And Washington D.C. He was hired in Washington D.C. as Bozo to attract customers
And
for
you know,
McDonald's.
for McDonald's, and I
For
gotta
McDonald's.
agree. I gotta agree with Ojogu that Ronald McDonald's probably more known than Popoff. But I agree. I don't see him as a clown, but he is a
No,
clown. I think he's a clown. Wouldn't you say he's a clown?
I think, when I think clown, I think Emmett Kelly, who I couldn't think of
Yeah,
his name earlier,
yeah.
who was, he worked for Ringling Brothers. That's who I think of in Bozo as a clown. I
As a
don't ever
clown.
think about Ronald McDonald being one.
I
He's
don't
just
either. A spokesman.
yeah, yeah.
He's a spokesman. Okay, if you guys are ready for the second bingo card, we're going to take a little tour of the international Bozos. Now, granted, a lot of them are in the United States. So if you do happen to see one in a city that you love or grew up or, know research of, please go to Dee's page and create a profile for them and maybe, link them to the global tree as well. Dee, as well as everybody that I've had on the Bingo Spaces page, love help.
Oh yeah, I would love if there's others that I don't have listed. If somebody would go in and add them on, that would be great. I'd like to get all of them listed on that one page.
That would be great because who knew? I mean, again, I still thought my Bozo was the only one around. So who knew that there were so many? And supposedly Bozo is trying to make a comeback. I don't have a lot of proof on that, but there is a famous musician that is trying to bring Bozo back. And I don't know. I got to research that one a little bit more. But if you guys do you know who I'm talking about?
Hang on just a sec.
And most of you will know who this person is. I
have his last name. I can't get his first name. Isn't that awful?
From the Smashing Pumpkins, Billy Corgan is talking.
He's part of it because
he's talking about also trying to have a 3-day celebration of Bozo the Clown in Chicago.
Okay, well,
in Chicago.
I hadn't heard that.
This is like 1 week old news. This is like hot off the presses.
Oh, because David Arquette, he was in Scream. Yeah. He was married to, what's her name? He bought the rights to the character in 2021.
Oh, that's
interesting. And so he's been talking about doing, movie or TV show or something.
It would be very interesting to see if they would do a movie so you can see behind the scenes. Because as I said, Bozo never had a bad day. Bozo was always the one, always happy. And as we know, as a human, that's just not possible. So it would be interesting to kind of see something with that. Or even, I would even be thrilled to see a documentary of all the Bozos as well. And, so...
I'd like to know, too, if the other ones... Yes, John David Arquette.
Yep.
I'd like to know if the other ones, the other Bozos, had other clowns on their shows too, or
that would be because a lot of them did have different characters. We didn't go into that, but that might be a second space page you hang off of this Bozo page because there were other characters involved, like the guy who beat the drum. I can't remember his name, but they're helpers, I guess is the best way to say it. Okay, so same rules apply for the bingo. I'm just going to go over the second page real quick. Just remember to get bingo horizontally, vertically, or diagonally. And if you accidentally click on something, just select it, click it again. Don't forget to type bingo really loud in the chat, and I will let Flo and Ann go ahead and have fun because it makes me smile when they type bingo. And I agree, Ann. Thank you. I'm so glad somebody brought this up. I had no idea there were so many Bozos from Ohio as well. When I was looking at the list, I was surprised at that. And this is exactly how you need to type it. Flo has not won bingo because we have not started yet, but this is exactly how to type it. And Chris does live in Ohio. So she is a resource here to prove that Ohio has a lot of bozos and clowns. And this is a good point too, Lisa. The most notable clowns are the Joker and Krusty the Clown. I have not heard of Twisty the Clown. I've heard of Krusty the Clown, but I've not heard of Twisty. Okay, let's go ahead and get started with a tour of Bozos. So Bill Merchant was from Grand Rapids, Michigan. And these were actual Bozos. These weren't ones that just kind of dressed up on a weekend and did it. These people who were actually Bozos on a show. And Bob McNee, I think, is from Detroit, Michigan. There were a lot in the Midwest. I was very interested at that, Dee, because you're up in the Midwest.
Yeah.
And Bob Shree in Cincinnati. He is pretty familiar and popular, too, for those that are in Ohio. He was a very, very popular Bozo. And Earl Caddy out of Flint, Michigan. Again, we're taking this tour, the Midwest, it feels like. And I'm really kind of curious because I know some of them did overlap and were on at the same time. And I'm really kind of curious to go look at their Bozo character faces because they all look the same. It's amazing to me. I guess the makeup does it. And Bob Bell out of Chicago, which is the one that we talked about. And he really is probably the one that started it all for the modern age and that most people would recognize.
Yeah, I always feel that all the other ones are kind of based off him a little bit.
I think you're right. Especially, and you notice because the hair started to come a little bit out and different. It's not as curly, creepy to the hair. To the head. David Eaton out of Dayton, Ohio. And this one was kind of fun, out of Rio de Janeiro. So Charles Mayara. That was kind of fun too. And it seemed to me, if you kind of look at these pages, you can see almost a migration where the Bozos really kind of went from the U.S. going south. And they started going into South America before they went a little bit more global. And I was fascinated by that to see kind of their transgression as they went through.
You like those migratory trails, don't you?
I really do. I really do. And as I say, you know, I can find an Appalachian in anybody's family tree because of those migration trails. So we talked about his dad. This was Pinto, and we talked about his dad. And when his dad no longer was doing it, his son took up the bingo hair.
Yeah.
Or, excuse me, the Bozo hair.
Bozo hair. Yeah.
Yeah.
The wig was passed on.
I mean, that is some serious bad hair day stuff going on for most of it. And of course, I love this. You know, we talked about how it was mostly in the Midwest, the United States, and kind of up in the Northeast, but Alabama had their own with Bart Darby.
I can't imagine a Southern twang on Bozo. That would have been really interesting.
Yes, I am dying to look up some archive videos for him because I think it would be fantastic and it would just bring Bozo to a different hilarious level for me. And Jim Chaplin and Toledo. Again, these are individuals that were actually on a TV show. These weren't ones that just dressed up on the weekend to go to, you know, possibly a children's hospital or a festival or a fair. These were actually people who were on the show. Now, with that said, almost every Bozo spent a tremendous amount of time out of the studio going to children's hospitals and children's events. They did a lot of charity work because they were so well known and recognized by the kids. And Jerry Booth, this one for Lisa, I will mention because this one is from Windsor, Ontario. So we are even now up into Canada. And we have a bingo.
Yay!
I think it's the Canada one that did it. It could be. Okay. Veg Beauty, I could you drop your WikiTree ID in the chat? I think I know who you are from the Sourceathon. from the Hangouts, but congratulations. Oh, wait. No, but you won a prize last week? Then hold everybody. Don't close your bingo card. Unfortunately, you're not eligible to win this time because you won a prize at the Source-a-thon. You got to wait 6 months for the prize. So if you still have your card up, let's continue. But thanks for playing along. I would play along too. I would definitely play along and have fun. Okay, Pat Tobin from South Dakota. I think he's from Sioux Falls, South Dakota. I thought that was kind of interesting too to see the migration. You know, one thing I didn't see on the list, but I'm curious. I didn't see a lot of Southwest, like, you know, the Arizona, the Texas, the Oklahoma, and I was surprised.
And I don't think there's a lot of Northeast either. You know,
yeah, I think
Massachusetts and Maine and
So it would be curious if you do come across these and you look at Dee's page. Feel free to add to her table, as she mentioned. And we have a bingo. We have Mark Levitt
Yay, Mark
is winner of bingo, and you're going to reach out to 𝐏𝐬𝐽 and tell her that you won the bingo and pick a mug. And Mark, I'm going to guess that there's a good chance that you might pick the global mug because Mark does a lot of work with the global project here on WikiTree. So I think that kind of wraps up our Bozo. What I'd like to say is that if you have a love of someone that you watched as a kid, create a space page because you might be surprised and there might be more than one. As the Bozo, there might be more than one. But don't forget about cartoons as well. So if you had a favorite cartoon, look up and see who was the main illustrator of that cartoon and maybe create a space page showing all their work because it would get lost sometimes in a profile. The space pages are what brings the profiles and the people, they connect them and brings them more information that's fascinating to learn about them. As you said, it could be something like Dee said, just learning about what was a state, or it could be something like Dee's page here with the bingo and with the Bozo. How many Bozos were there and are they connected? If you guys have any time at all today or this weekend, feel free, add to the Bozo page. We've got a couple that we'd love to have profiles built, and especially for Bob Bells, if you can get them connected to the tree, that would be great too. And don't forget, we have one more bingo later on today. This is the October bingo, and we're talking about Nobel Prize winners later on tonight. So historical bingo will be later on tonight with myself and David. Thanks so much, Dee. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
This was fun, and I hope it was fun for everybody else taking a trip down memory lane to your own childhood. And we will see you guys later on tonight. Bye.
Bye.